Welcome back. Let's now start working on project number 2 of this section. And in this small project, we're going to build our first UI component. And that is this modal window that we can see here by opening or by clicking actually on one of these buttons. So I'm sure you've seen this kind of component all over the place when visiting web pages. And so it's simply this window here basically and this overlay which gets overlaid over the rest of the page, right? So no matter which of these 3 buttons we click, it will always open this modal window. And to close this window, as you already saw, we can either click this button here or we can click outside of the window. So basically on this overlay. And again, I'm sure that you have seen this functionality when visiting other web pages. So that worked as well. And finally, we can also close this window by hitting the escape key on our keyboard like this. Okay. And this is actually very simple and very easy to build. Probably way easier than it looks like. But it will still be very useful to learn how to work with classes. And that's super important because manipulating classes is actually the main way in which we manipulate web pages. Okay. Now here on the left side, I still have the code from the previous project open. And that's because I wanted to show you how to close the live server. So let's go back to the terminal. And so as we hit new terminal, it actually creates a new terminal. So if we want to go to the first one that was already running, we need to go here to this menu here, and then number 1, which is this node. So to change this now, we hit Control C, and that's even Control on a Mac. So it's not Command C, it is Control C. And I guess on Windows, it's going to be the same. But if it's not, you can just click this trash can here, and that will also then kill the terminal. So as I hit Control C, the process has finished, and so the live server is no longer running. So if I come here to this URL, so this localhost URL plus the current port, which is 8080. So if I now reload this page, it will be gone. So there's no connection possible anymore because I just killed the live server. Okay, just wanted to let you know about that. Okay, anyway, let's now close up this folder here and open a new one. And as always, I already have here the starter files for this Modal project. So let's open up a new VS Code window. And let's open up this one. And once again, I have the prettier configuration here, and then the index, the JavaScript, and the CSS styles. Okay, open up script. And actually we can open all of them because we will want to take a look at the 3 files. Okay, and as before, we still are using strict mode, and so I already included that here at the top of the file. Okay, and now let's get to work actually. Now this time we will actually start by selecting everything that we're gonna need for this project. So that's usually what we do when we build a project like this. So we select the elements that we need, and then we store the selections into variables, okay? And then we can use them over and over again. So that's way better than selecting the same elements over and over again, like we did in the last project, all right? But in the last project, I didn't want to overcomplicate stuff and do too many things at the same time, and so I just selected all the stuff multiple times. But again, this time, we will have all the necessary selections, so all the necessary elements that we're going to need, nicely organized here at the top of the file, each in its own variable. So let's take a look at the HTML. And so here we see the 3 buttons. So that's these 3 buttons. And then we actually already have the modal window here in the code. So this div element here. So it's already in the code. It's simply hidden. That's why it has this hidden class. And now in the CSS, let's come here to the bottom of the file. And so the hidden class simply sets the display to none. And so that's why the window is currently hidden. All right. So again, as I said in the beginning, in this project, we will work with classes. And so this hidden class is the main class that we will be concerned with. So anyway, this means that we will not basically create the HTML for the modal window using JavaScript. It is already there. All we will do is to show it and to hide it according to the clicks on the buttons. So that's the modal, and that is the overlay. So that's basically this dark part here, which hides the background. And then here we have this button to close the modal window. And so that's all that we need. So again, we need to select the modal, the overlay, the close modal button, and then of course the show modal buttons. Okay, so let's do that. So const modal is document.querySelector, and then just like before, we are looking for the element with the class of modal. Okay, so just like we did in the first project, we select an element using this selector, but then this time we actually store the result of the selection, so the selected element, in this variable. Okay, so that's the element with the class modal. Now we want overlay and then close modal. So overlay, and of course we could give these any names that we wanted, but these names make it easy to understand what they are. So I'm giving them the same names as the class names, basically. So that's the overlay. And now the close modal button. And let's call this one actually a button. So btn, which stands for button, and then close modal document.querySelector. And then this class is close-modal. Okay. And now finally, we also want the show modal buttons. Now, there are actually 3 elements with this class name. So let me show you what happens when we simply select in the same way that we did before. So let's say button, or buttons actually, because we want multiple, open modal, and then document.querySelector open modal. Okay, and so watch what happens when we log this to the console. So buttons open modal, that's the one. And now to actually see this, we need to again start the live server. So new terminal, clear this console, and then all I have to do is to type live server, hit enter, and here we go. So this is our modal window now. And this one we can now close. And actually it has the exact same URL. So it's always this 127.0.0.1, which stands for localhost at port 8080. So if we reloaded this one, it would show us the same thing. Okay, so we can just close one of them. And so it looks exactly the same as the demo. But of course, nothing is going to happen yet. Because as you know, we have no event handlers on any of these buttons yet. But now I wanted to take a look at the console. And yeah. And now here we get null for some reason. So it means that it could not select anything here for this selector. And so let's take a look. Yeah, actually it is show modal and not open. Okay, so let's fix that. So it's not open, it is show. And maybe you have spotted that if you took a more careful look at the HTML than I did. Now anyway, now we see this button here selected. However, as you can see, it is only the first one. okay? And so now we see the limitation of our query selector method here for the first time. So whenever we use query selector with a selector which actually matches multiple elements, only the first one will get selected. And so here we need another one, but it's pretty similar. It's called query selector all. So that's a pretty obvious name, but it's gonna do the job. So as I save now you see that we get something called a node list here. So let me open that. And now as I hover, you see that these are actually all of our 3 buttons. Okay. So this node list here is a little bit like an array. It's not exactly like an array, but here for now, it works as though it was an array. Okay. And so now if we want to do something, for example, to all of these buttons, then we can simply loop through this node list and do something with them. So let's actually quickly do that. So we will now again use the for loop. And now I hope there's no need to explain anymore how this one works. So I should stay below the length of this node list, which again, for our purposes here, works just like an array. Buttons open modal dot length, and then at the end of each iteration, increase the counter. And so in each iteration, what we want to do is simply to log to the console the text content of each of them. All right. So what we want to do is buttons open modal, and then we take the current one. And so this here is now an element. Okay. It's one of these elements. And well, now it already logged because it saved the file. But yeah, anyway, each of these here is one element. And so now on each of them, we can simply use the text content property just like we did in the last project. All right. So let's save it again. And indeed, now we get the 3 text contents for all the 3 buttons. And here you might have noticed that I didn't even use the curly braces to define a block. And that's because just like in an if-else statement, if there's only one line of code that I want to execute, I actually don't have to create this block. Okay, I can just write one line after the for loop, and then that's the one that will be iterated over and over again. Okay, so again, this works just fine. And now I have a way of selecting multiple elements with the same class. And then with the for loop, I can do something for each of them. In this case, all we did was to log their text content to the console. But in the future, we will then be able to do real stuff using this technique. Okay, and that's it for this video. In the next one, we will actually already make this modal window work. So don't wait, and let's move on to the next video right away.